Hello and welcome to episode 20 of our Navigating Turbulent Times webinar series, today in partnership with the team at EMCOR UK, who you can all see neatly lined up along the top of our screen there. As you'll probably be aware, all this week we are hosting our Turbulent Times themed conference, where we are exploring 4 global megatrends impacting on workplace and facilities professionals today in today's current climate. EMCOR UK are insight partner of this year's conference, and in a thought-provoking session earlier on this week, they hosted a discussion of what they regard as the hot topic of our times, well-being. Today, with that cross-cutting theme very much still in mind, we will welcome them back to focus on 3 other megatrends that dominate our conference: climate change, technology, and the future of work. Today's format will see around 20 to 25 minutes given to each of those topics. Firstly, one of the team will offer a topic overview and highlight the key considerations before being joined to look at the practical implications for workplace and facilities management professionals. That should take around 15 minutes, and then we'll have another 10 or so minutes to ask questions of our presenters and to explore the themes in more detail before moving on to the next presentation. So have your questions ready and use the Q&A function to post them to me, and I'll be putting your questions along with some of my own to these experts in due course. So we will probably just about say cheerio to the team across the top there with their webcams and microphones, that each one of them will be coming back to do their particular session. So our first topic, and probably one of the most important for the world right now, is climate change. It was clear when singling out the main macro themes impacting our work that climate change was going to be chief among them. Before the pandemic, awareness and momentum was growing to make systemic changes to everyday life in order for us to safeguard our future. But during that pandemic, that has intensified, as it was clear when enforced lockdowns came into operation, that there was a demonstrable impact on our environment, and that has led to this ambition that's gathering lots of momentum and dominating some of the thinking around the future about building back better. So to explore this topic in more detail, let me hand over to EMCOR UK CEO Keith Chanter and Head of Energy Services Claire Hawkins.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome to the session on climate change. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the science. If you want to see that, it's well documented elsewhere, and you'll see David Attenborough explaining beautifully the effects on the planet of that climate change. What I'm going to do is try and instill in you what I have in myself is the absolute need for change. And I want to take you back what seems like an age to January of this year, when the World Economic Forum was taking place. So I'm going to make sure I get these statements right. So just apologize for me reading from one youngest Swedish activist called Greta, who you may all know, who basically said our host, and by that she meant the planet, is still on fire. And by that she means politicians and governments, inaction is fueling the flames. And you remember that sort of very positive statement for call for action that Greta got over the line at the WEF. One of the key responses to that was obviously from a very senior politician from a very major country, and to get his words exactly right, I'll again quote them. And he said, "But to embrace the possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of apocalypse." And he went on to say that Greta should really go on an anger management course and maybe go to the cinema and try and chill out a bit. And you'll probably remember the Twitter feed where she did exactly that. But it matters not really where you sit in the spectrum, whether you're a Greta, let's say an XR individual, or whether you're perhaps a little more cynical about whether these effects are happening. Because if you look at the consensus that's now being reached within the scientific community, and you can latch on to one or two scientists who will give you both ends of those spectrums, that actually it's just a cyclical thing with the planet and we'll be all right tomorrow. And those are actually saying it is actually about human interaction, and that we're damaging this planet day in, day out by the things we do. But if you look at the consensus, and there's a lot of work being undertaken by some very learned people about looking at the average scientists and what they averagely think, then there's a really strong majority now saying that human interaction, human action, is causing this planetary decay. So we've got the scientists kind of telling us there's a compelling reason. And that's really fed into the governments who are working on that science and saying, actually, within the United Nations context, about 196, I think, signed up to that pledge, but also 196 up to the Paris Agreement, saying we need to act to control this climate change emergency. Interestingly, even though the US are withdrawing in November from that Paris Agreement, most US citizens also likewise believe there's a real issue with climate change, and it is us humans that are causing it. So we just touched upon that Paris Agreement a little bit, and there's a little bit of science in here, but not very much. This 2 degrees C threshold that we're trying to make sure we stay below really understates the problem, because if you look at the way that's going to hit the geography of the planet, it massively affects both the Arctic and the Antarctic. And we're going to see something of the order of plus 10 degrees C in both of those geographies. And that clearly means, and if you speak to any Antarctic or Arctic explorer, even back in the days when Ranulph Fiennes was setting records, the 1980s and 1990s, he was saying then he was seeing massive decay of the ice caps, and it was a real issue for him to actually carry out those long journeys, man-hauling his sledge across those crevasses of ice. Now it's much more exaggerated, and it is so because we're seeing massive plus 10 degrees, both the caps melting their ice, and of course that causes sea levels to rise and the loss of land that we occupy as humans. And not just humans, remember, it is all those other species that are going to be affected by this climate change. It's estimated that even at plus 2 degrees C, and if we were to go above it, it'd be even worse. We might be looking at up to half of our insect population being affected, up to half of our vegetation being affected. And this is the vegetation that we eat. And as a consequence of that, about 25 of the vertebrates on this planet may well move into extinction. So these are the things that the scientists are kind of telling us about. And you might say, well, it's kind of over there, it's in the North Pole, it's in the South Pole, it really doesn't affect me. Just cast your mind back to the beast from the east. One thing that Donald Trump said recently, which does resonate with me, is that we're going to see more hot spots and we're going to see more cold spots. Yes, we are. We're going to see more extremes of temperature coming to us in every single geography. So whether it be the beast from the east, all those Kiara and Dennis storms that we've had, and they cause not just property damage, but human damage too, and habitat and so on. So we are seeing it in the UK. Something I brought home that really markedly to me was the highest temperature at Heathrow, 37.8 degrees C. And for those of you who remember that very temperature, it is a COVID-19 kind of threshold. So it sits very firmly in my memory as a really hot temperature, but also very topical right now. So as I said, whether you're a Greta, a Swedish activist, or an XR community supporter, or maybe a somewhat cynical politician, or even a businessman, you cannot ignore that both citizens, our consumers and our customers, and the legislation is now forcing us to act. And you might say that's sort of a negative action in the sense that we're being asked to do something, required to do something. And I don't personally believe that. I think there's a motive and a moral motive to get this right for our current population, but also the legacy we leave behind for those that follow us. But there are one things for me that's for sure, and I'm a bit of an economist in the background, is that the economic cost of consuming power will increase. And if you look at the social stroke economic cost of carbon now, it's about $80 a ton. And it doesn't mean anything to anybody, I guess, but what I will tell you is that about $30 per ton is the current cost of you buying that power in terms of a ton CO2 equivalent. So we're only being charged about 40% of the true cost of creating power for us to use. And you've got to believe that either through legislation, through taxes, or through just pure supply and demand, eventually that cost of power will go up and start to reflect these things. There will be, of course, variations due to world events, and we're seeing some of those right now. So with that background, the United Nations SDGs I talked about, which are 17, but 3 of them are really focused for me on this issue. One is the provision of renewable energy. The second is climate action and what we can do to try and stimulate changes in behaviours and so on. And the third one, which we're majoring on in EMCOR UK, is responsible consumption. and it's responsible for the consumption of power that we have as a company, which is a relatively small footprint, to that which we as FM industry players tend to control and influence within our customer base. So we're trying to consume responsibly to make sure that, you know, we create a better world at work in terms of that climate change issue, and that's the major thrust that we're operating within EMCOR UK at the moment. So I think there's a huge theme of compelling evidence, both scientifically, but also in terms of citizen power, consumer power, customer power, and then ultimately legislation. We just need to get on and do this. So what is this? Claire, I'm kind of hoping you might be able to help with some practical advice as to what this may be.
Thanks, Keith. So really, whatever your stance on climate change, in the UK, the government's actually declared a climate emergency. We've got laws ending our contribution to global warming. So regardless of what you want to do, we have to actually, we're being forced to act, and the clock's ticking towards 2050. Now, the McKinsey report has also recognised that all sectors of the UK can actually affect and reduce consumption. And it's the demand side of energy consumption where the FM industry can really affect the greatest change. Now, if you look at our reach, we've got access not only to our own activities and those of our supply chain partners, but across our customers, across every sector of business and industry. And we're in a pivotal position really to champion energy efficiency and responsible consumption across that whole value chain. And that will accelerate our whole carbon neutral journey. So how do we create this better world at work? I'm going to focus on two key areas. One's going to be our customer building stock. Now, if you look at the UK's carbon footprint, 40% is from the built environment. And of that, 28% is the operational emissions. And that is keeping our buildings heated, keeping them cooled and keeping the lights on. And then I'm going to look at the FM fleet, because as a service industry, for EMCOR themselves, 93% of our carbon footprint is due to the 900 vehicles that we operate across the nation. So in all cases, the approach is always the same. It's measure. It's all about meaningful data. It's assessing the baseline. It's defining your starting point. Now, big data has seen a huge surge in the availability and ease at which we can collect all of this information. But we just don't want deluges of data. We need to decide what has value. Reams and reams of information that aren't actioned have no worth whatsoever. So we need to be able to determine the performance characteristics, how they influence operation. We need to regularly report, we regularly analyse and feedback. And it's those actions that help us actually realise efficiencies. Now, when you talk about utility meters, there's automatic meter readers, the smart sensors, the range is huge and it's getting bigger all of the time. This technology means that it's now easily deployed, minimal cost, and it can give you real-time view of performance and enable you to act. And it's that action that really makes the difference. Now, if you adopt a recognised approach, it could be something like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, it could be ISO 50001. That gives you added assurity that your approach really is robust, that it's sound, and it gives you that continual improvement. An approved scheme, it'll always give you that external validation. An ISO certificate ensures that your energy improvement is really at the heart of your business, that every aspect of your processes have been considered, and that it actually drives strategic direction through recognising your risks and your opportunities to climate change. So once you've measured, you then have to manage it. You've got your data, you understand how your assets operate, you need to influence that through ongoing performance management. And this drives your avoid and your reduce strategies. So take, for example, you have energy data, you've got energy profiles. You can actually see your building have a high base load. Your BMS can be logged. Your profiles show that your air handling units are running excessively. Your plant's running when the building is empty. It's running to provide air volumes which are no longer valid for its current occupancy and use. Enhanced monitoring, optimised control They can now provide demand-led strategies that match required air volumes with your fan speed and your indoor air quality. They ensure that your CO2 volumes support optimum human performance and improve well-being. They can also obviously enhance and support energy-saving objectives. And that's all well and good, but we never ever have to forget the basics. Switch off. Never ever underestimate the impact from the simplest measures, and never assume that it's been done or actioned by somebody else. And I still find many occasions that you can go into an office environment and people still do not know where their light switches are. And that is quite, in this day and age, a scary position to be in. Now, when you're looking at asset replacement, realise the opportunities for improvement through increased efficiencies. Technology improves all of the time, and you should be looking for those A++ models to replace your aging assets with. Take a whole cost life approach when you're making those investment decisions. It gives you an even playing field. You speak a common language, comparing apples with apples. Help make that business case. Help your customer gain budget approval. And when Keith's already mentioned, when you take into consideration the social cost of carbon alongside the economic cost of carbon, that really, really accelerates that decision-making process. And what I'm trying to say is you need to understand that it's an integrated approach to responsible consumption, and that is the only way that we can actually ensure continual and integrated approach to reduction. It's similar with fleet. We're measuring our starting point, and that's being made a lot easier by the implementation of vehicle telematics. Data is informing our whole approach. Our driver education program, we're looking at actually insights through driver behaviour scores. We're looking at targeting training to improve that actual score. We're looking at the transition to electric vehicles, but again, that's hindered by our geographical coverage and the requirements for our van specification. The UK charging infrastructure, well, that is woefully inadequate, and van supply is slow. But we've got plans and we've got targets to reduce, and we can't currently avoid these emissions. So we're aiming to be carbon neutral, and I'm talking about scope 1 and 2, but by 2021. Now, this requires the actual purchase of carbon offset allowances, but it's via certified VCS and gold standard schemes, and these will actually align to our sustainable development goals within EMCOR. Now, offsetting is not seen at all as a get out of jail card at EMCOR, but it's merely our transitory approach. It's whilst we develop those and implement those avoid and reduce strategies. And upon reflection, looking at what we've already discussed, I've really covered the easy options in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. We're talking about scope 1 and 2, building use, fleet use. It's those under direct ownership, it's those under operational control. But it's really the scope 3 emissions across the whole value chain. And these represent the largest portion of any greenhouse gas inventory. And the difficulty around collecting this data creates a huge barrier to any sort of reduction scheme. Now, this is a challenge we need to face on. We as FMs need to actually head this up to tackle climate change. At EMCOR, we're at the measure stage. We're working with our partners to actually collect our baseline scope 3 data. Our sustainability dashboard will enable full reporting across a whole range of sustainability metrics, including emissions, and that's for all of our clients and our supply chain partners. Now, we see this as really transformational change to fully understand the extent of our scope 1, our scope 2, and our scope 3 emissions and their associated climate change impact. For EMCOR, it really enables a robust and a science-based approach to align to that trajectory, which will lead us to net zero emissions. It supports our customers and our supply chain in doing the same to understand exactly what net zero means to them and how we can help them to get there. And I think it is through leading this example, through learning, sharing best practice, that we as FM practitioners, we can influence all sectors to create that better world at work and indeed to really create that better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire and Keith. So really important topic. We're going to do a bit of a Q&A now. just for everyone watching, you've got the Q&A function in the box on the in your GoToWebinar panel. Use that, get the questions firing in. In the meantime, I've got some that have already come in and some of my own. I think, Keith, I just want to come back to something that you mentioned and Claire sort of referenced as well, where you were talking about looking at the sort of wider holistic view of this in terms of the sort of social cost. You referenced the social cost of this as well, and it did make me wonder whether you think that we're doing enough as a profession, as a community of people, to take this debate to its widest possible lens, whereas I think traditionally we've been very focused on energy consumption, maybe as just a single element of it. Do you think that we're still like that? Are we still a bit too narrow in the focus? Are we moving away from that? Are we on the journey to becoming a bit more holistic with this stuff? How do you see us as a community of people in that debate?
Yeah, Guy, thanks for the question. It's in the context of where we are right now, we've seen a number of things evolve, and I think even Boris, if you go back in some of the statements he's made, he's trying to balance economy, which in a corporate sense might be our P&L. You're trying to balance the social aspects of our interactions with humans and getting ourselves going again. Of course, we're looking at a more difficult period right now. And he's looking at health and whether climate change is in any of those, you could argue it is or isn't. But I think we're seeing a much more holistic general approach to industry. And I think if you look at the investment community, for example, which is moving down into reporting against either sustainable development goals or at least your environmental plans, in particular reference to climate action, then I think we're going to see the pure capitalist motive of our customers and maybe ourselves being really challenged with operating in a much more responsible corporately way. And so I sense that it is really, really relevant for us now to start to offer those solutions and start to get in that dialogue with our customers that we clearly need at this moment here to offer a good cost-effective service, because some of our customer base is really struggling. But we can do that also aligning ourselves with a great climate change action agenda, in my opinion.
And just
to finish off on this, Chris, I don't want to get into social agendas, but I think the truth is also true of the social agenda and the well-being agendas.
Yeah. Just to expand on that as well, Keith, you'll be working with organisations all the time. You'll be talking to business leaders all the time. Do you think we're finally seeing the shift around topics like this, like energy, like sustainability, like climate change, however we might want to frame it? Do you think we're starting to see us moving away to what I've often talked about almost being a sort of a cynical tick box exercise for the annual review, where you've got to sort of show your shareholders that you've planted a few trees and painted a few sheds, where actually no, this is actually sitting core now? Are you starting to see a significant shift away from that, or is there still a bit of that kicking around?
I think that shift needs to come from in a leadership context. And I do believe that a lot of leadership groups now at the top of the FTSE 100s and elsewhere are now looking at a much wider agenda than they were in the past. I think, dare I say it, some of the more cynical NEDs that are beginning to move away from those companies and being replaced by more youthful, forward-looking, current-looking individuals, I think they're really demanding a response to both the social and the environmental agenda. So I do think we are at the cusp of that, and I think in this recent period we probably had an acceleration. I mean, to Greta's point, I think there's more fuel on our flames to get going. So I do think we're now at a point where we've got a very open audience to helping them address some of these issues.
So that's a nice segue, Claire. I just wanted to ask you some of the bits that you mentioned that I think are really interesting, because something you said there about the light switches in offices, and actually the most important thing we could do is actually just switch some of this stuff off. It got me thinking that you quite often hear that the actual technical solutions exist, right? We can do, when we talk about technology actually in the workplace, I kind of always say that actually you can do whatever you can imagine right now. Someone somewhere can make it happen. Like, the technology is such a point now where we can do anything, but actually behaviors and motivation and mindset is what gets in the way. I heard someone talk about it in terms of the government saying never think investment is a matter of resources, it's about will, because suddenly we've got the money to do stuff. So how do you, when you're working with clients and when you're out there in the real world with these solutions, how much of a factor is behavior change? Because for me, that seems like a difficult nut to crack.
I think it's very, very important. By virtue of being a service industry, we don't sell widgets, we don't have a product. People primarily are our product, and you have to really get that firm foundation right to have any sort of success. And I think as well, the way that society is thinking now is helping that whole agenda, and you really get that push from the outside in to an organisation, because people already come ready, prepared, with their own mindset about wanting to do the right thing. And I think that it's an open door that we need to push against, and we need to actually capitalise on that support. But again, behavioural change, as I said, we've got 4,500 employees across the UK. That is a huge, huge weapon in our arsenal against climate change that we have to actually use it and make powerful for the good. So it's very, very important.
And also as well, I'm in danger of picking out a statistic without remembering where I saw it and who said it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I was talking to one of our research partners and we were talking about sustainability, and I think there's this sort of this sense that, you know, energy consumption within the concrete box that we're occupying is where we're going to focus our attention, and certainly that seems like the most obvious. But someone did a study, I think it was for the higher education sector, where they said actually the biggest saver of energy that we could possibly put forward is actually reducing the amount of space we occupy. Now, it's a slightly generalist thing to say, and probably quite a controversial thing to say, but actually they're saying, and I think this is coming through actually post-pandemic, there's a lot of wasted space out in the world of workplace. We look at utilization figures, we look at, you know, I think it was Barclays boss has said, yeah, I think that the monolithic tower in the centre of London is finished because my building's empty. I mean, what he didn't mention is that his building's probably 50% occupied at the best of times anyway, but it didn't seem to bother him at that point. But there is more that can be done that's not just simply about energy solutions, but actually just thinking more, going back to this idea of holistically, going back and saying, actually, let's think smarter about consumption generally, not energy, but just consumption. So do you think that this pandemic, we've all seen the images of the clear waters running through Venice and everyone getting very excited about that, and the satellite feed? Do you think we've got an opportunity to like I said in the intro, build back better? And do you think this is a real opportunity for people like yourselves who are trying very hard to work with organisations to help this? Actually, we've got a platform, we've got a momentum now to go out there and make some real changes. We all go back.
I think it is a point of no return. We are in that pivotal position. We've seen what it can be like. We're at a huge advantage now because we've had that foresight. We've had that advantage where before we didn't actually know what it would look like when people didn't occupy those huge big concrete boxes. But now we know that it does work, and there are really sound, workable solutions and alternatives to how we used to work. And so I think now is definitely the time. If it doesn't happen now, I don't think it will ever happen. This is something that we can't let go of. This really is a starting point to do things differently and to do things better. It's the whole more with less approach, definitely.
Now, I'm putting on my content hat there. That would have been a great place to go. Well, we'll wrap it up there, because that's such a perfect sentence you finished off with there. But I do want to ask one more thing, because the question's just come in, and I think it's crucial. And I don't mind who picks this up, whether it's yourself or Keith or Claire. Skills. So we talk all the time about, you know, we can help people. We've got solutions. We've got, you know, but actually, have we got the skills within, and this is probably more of a question for me if I was on the panel, but have we got the skills in the profession to make the most to have that impact, or is there still some work to be done? So I don't mind, Keith, Claire, maybe Claire, we'll start with you, because you'll be working with
Claire, you go first.
teams, and then Keith.
So I think there are skills out there. I don't think there's enough of the skills, and I don't think the skills are necessarily in the right place, because, to be honest, energy management, climate change, it's always been downplayed. It's only now that it's actually coming to the fore, getting its rightful position, I think, on the agenda. And it has always been the one that's been knocked back. The investment side has never been up for energy efficiency. It's always been prioritised in some other aspects, some other business decision. So I think now it is a real coming together of minds. And again, opportunity is good. And I just think that there are firm foundations. It just needs a bit of building, a bit of concentration, a bit harder work. But I don't think we're that far away. It's just realising that opportunity and realising where those skill sets lie. Because energy management, climate change, sustainability, it isn't a predefined subject. It does touch on such a huge, big range of subject matter, disciplines and skills. So we can actually draw on that and pull them together to make a real difference.
Right. Keith, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think the technical skills probably do exist within the industry. I'd agree with Claire, maybe not everywhere in every place, but I think the convincing skills are the ones that we probably need to hone a bit more and really get that compelling business case across. And I don't just mean the pounds, shillings and pence, I mean the social bits of that too, and make it very relevant for the customer. I think those two things together will create a faster period of change, and we absolutely need that. So I think what I would say is, in the industry, we're technically very able to do that, and there's some really good people there, and there are also some good consultants who can help us get that compelling case together. We need to bring those two elements into the same place for our customer. Brilliant.
Well, that concludes our first topic, our first session which is focused on climate change. I just want to thank Keith and Claire. Keith, we're going to see you a bit later on. Thank you, Claire, for your insights. For everybody else, thanks for your questions that have come through. We have got Pen, for those that have been part of our conference this week, we've got Pen Hando, who has actually travelled to the North Pole, and he's going to be giving us, we really wanted to bring home sort of real experience of what we're talking about here, because I think it's quite easy for us to see stuff on TV and read stuff, but actually hearing it, and I had a briefing session with him last week, just hearing some of the stories he was telling me. One that really stuck out was he was talking about a section of the North Pole where he's been there a few times. First time he went, he walked from point A to point B. Next time he went, he had to swim. Thus was the melting effect. So if you are part of our conference, do tune in on Friday to listen to Pen. Also as well, I think it's worth noting that part of our sustainability agenda, we have got a sustainability hub. You can find that on the website. It's got loads of stuff on there about some of the research that we've done over the years, as well as some of the content. So do check that out. But on with the program. So we are now moving on to our next mega trend. And this one is one that comes up quite often, but I think we are hitting a bit of momentum, like we are with most of these mega trends, for some real, I think, step change, technology. So in 2019, we published a paper which explored workplace and FM's relationship with technology and how it might influence and even shape our future. The results of the work could be considered worrying, highlighting a knowledge gap around key technologies, and that in turn leading to a lack of awareness about their likely impact. So things like big data, artificial intelligence and robotics were among the technologies that less than half of the respondents to the survey thought would impact FM in the next 10 years. So they didn't even think it was impacting us now, and they didn't see there having been much of an impact in the next 10 years in doing what we're doing, which I suspect might have been a bit of a head in the sand moment. And like I say, this technology is already shaping our future. So we need to get ahead of the curve. I always say this with technology, it's coming whether you like it or not. So you like a wave, you can either choose to let it consume you, or you can grab a surfboard and learn to surf. But to help us with our first surf lesson and how we can harness technology and how we can embrace it rather than be fearful of it, is the next team from EMCOR. So we will be joined by EMCOR UK's Head of Workplace, Ian Baker, and Business Change and Improvement Director, Rhiannon Brenton. But first, with a technology overview, is their Insights and Strategic Development Director, Simi Gandhi Whitaker. Over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that introduction. Yes, I will be starting a bit of a surfing lesson after this. I think what I want to really start by is asking a question to our IWFM audience. I don't know about you, but do you find yourself wondering exactly what technology really is? I feel I'm constantly bombarded and hit by words, or even using words by self-proclaimed IT experts, but not really truly knowing what they mean. Smart tech, tech smart, connected work, connected space, connected people, digital, digital twin, AI, IoT, Power BI, Azure, the cloud, of course, the cloud, and robots. Chris mentioned those robots. I mean, a few years ago, we thought they were all going to kick us out of a job like the Terminator, but you know, here we still are, thank goodness. I was recently invited to watch a TED talk where the speaker, fun fact, asked his daughter to check how many items of technology they actually had in their home. It was sort of like a summer assignment, and she counted 6,000. Another fun fact, to put that into context, King Henry VIII only had a total wealth of 7,000 items in the whole of his household, and that was across 55 castles. So, you know, and he was a pretty wealthy dude. So I mean, I know we're not in the 16th century and you'd like to think things have evolved, but it's just to put it into context, really. And I guess that my point on that is that we don't have to be tech experts or geeks, you know, sat in basements wearing socks and sliders to really understand how the digital world has been and continues to impact every single decision we make. We only have to look at the news over the last 24 hours, really, just to see how technology, or the lack of, is having a major impact on our country. It's unpredictable, but it's necessary. I mean, I'm going to be contentious here and say it's not a trend, it's not a mega trend. We are in the information age. So as Sam, those of you who saw Sam Conniff this morning said, the decade of disruption is coming. So what are we going to do as workplace and FM experts to really take on those key professional risks? I'd like to think that it's fair to say that technology is everybody's responsibility, and it's really up to us to decide as a sector on how far we want to embrace it. And how we, I guess, elevate ourselves, because this has always been a question within our sector. But we really want to sort of help businesses, our customers, to make those key strategic, insightful and effective decisions. So what I'm going to do is just for the next couple of minutes, focus on, I guess, 3 key emerging trends that I kind of see will be are either happening right now in pockets of excellence, or are going to be even more accelerated. So starting with the first one is around data-led decisions. A major aspect of what we do as FMs is to control a large number of systems for our customers. So I believe it's really important that we ensure integration is key. It's vital to what we do for our customers to help them make, as I said, those key strategic, holistic decisions that are based on actual analytics and real insightful information. We don't really want to think of portfolios or individual items as isolated spaces, but more sort of taking ownership on behalf of our customers and really look at the whole estates holistically, and not just having, you know, the assets separated, the BMS controls separated, the sensors, the IoT, the devices, but really having an integrated offer. The second aspect that's obviously really key right now, and many of us talk about it, is the actual technology that sits behind all of our workplaces. So we need to really allow the users to be able to better engage with their environments. And I think we've, again, been doing that really, really well in pockets. But now, I'm going to say it, now we're in COVID, you know, we really need to accelerate that, you know, whether you're a SOHO, a small office or home office, or a small, medium, large enterprise, the key thing that people are looking for from technology is speed, agility, and efficiency. So we as FMs and workplace experts have a real important task there to support our customers and, of course, ourselves. And finally, but by no way means the least is that whole piece around the inter-company collaborations. So these are really core emerging themes that we're starting to see and embrace. Obviously, COVID's been almost like a steroid injection for industries to start thinking about this, but we need to kind of review maturity steps into culture and ethos of the businesses. You know, so, and what I mean by that is being able to carry out productivity reviews, you know, just because we can have video and interact with our colleagues, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do and that we're being the most productive. I think it's really important to sort of take that to the next step and really review productivities now that so many of us are working from home, and give insightful analytics around this. I don't know about you, but you know, that honeymoon period of sort of having regular meetings initially and being able to interact with colleagues was really great. But now actually having back-to-back Teams calls is sucking that creativity out. And is that really the most productive I'm being for my company? So I suppose before I hand over to my colleague Rhiannon, who's going to sort of talk more about the practical elements of some of these emerging trends, it's really just to summarise and say that we really need to make data-led informed decisions backed with the right technology to give the user a really great experience, as well as the industries, all of us, taking maturity to the next level with productivity reviews. So whether you embrace technology or not, and by this I mean thinking using your landline and cycling and walking everywhere and stopping off to read your hardback latest novel by Marion Keynes is it. Technology and the digital world is everywhere. So as Sam said this morning, think like a pirate. Ask yourselves those difficult questions and how are we going to raise our profile as an industry? I'm going to hand over to Rhiannon now. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. I like that surfing analogy as well. I might have to use that one. So within our transformation service team, we have a dedicated business change and improvement team. We utilise Lean Six Sigma tools to identify process improvements, but also where we can enhance or streamline with the adoption of digital technologies. Our workforce productivity programme demonstrates the deployment of process changes and new technology into the business. To ensure the programme is a success, we listen to the voice of the customer, meaning that our improvements are designed from the outside in, but we also, in addition to this, we complete time and motion studies and workshops with our employees in the field, who are essentially our insiders with the intimate knowledge of processes, and they give us the insights to ensure that the processes we're seeking to improve will work. And that early engagement helps us to identify potential problems with our proposed solutions, but also to seek those who will be the early adopters, those early surfers, to support us implementing change within the business. When we identify technology improvements, we consider the emotional effects on our employees. So our focus is to make digital transformation a hugely positive experience for everyone. A perception, as Simi just said, that digital transformation threatens jobs can lead to both conscious and subconscious resistance to change. So we emphasise that digital transformation processes are an opportunity for employees to update their skill set and suit the workplace of the future. From a personal perspective, and like Simi said, digital transformation is embedded in everyone's daily lives. During lockdown, we installed a robotic lawnmower, our first robot in the house, and that gives me an extra hour every week to train my new Labrador puppy and persuade him to fetch a tennis ball and not my flip-flop. So it's my own personal productivity of my home life. So it's a positive experience for all, and we sell the benefits of productivity improvements to our employees' day-to-day life. We're continuously improving the workforce management programme to identify where technology can help us create further benefits. So my team, we have Innovation Hour every Friday, and we also have regular workshops with our users out in the field to identify what can we do to further improve their day-to-day working life, and what can we do to improve business efficiencies. So our programme will never be completed. We will always be in a point of reviewing for continuous improvement of both technology adoption and ensuring that this is embedded within our culture. So by implementing these processes and tools, we've managed to improve the quality of service by 19% in our first time fix rate and at least 30% improvement in productivity. So this allows us to deliver a higher quality service more efficiently with a happier workforce. Above all, our customer satisfaction and our employee wellbeing is paramount, which leads me nicely on to Ian Baker, who's going to talk to us about the workplace.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Yeah, so from my perspective, I think that when you look at the many problems we're now facing from the perspective of the workplace, many of them can be addressed by the use of technology. And a lot of the issues that we see either with working remotely or our return to the workplace can be improved with the better adoption of and use of tech. But I think it's interesting that over the past 3 to 5 years, as the computing power of technology has grown, and it's been used successfully in some of the best buildings across the world, that although we now have a great proof of concept, that the uptake across the wider landscape has been relatively slow. Although I think it is fair to say that facilities and workplace managers have seen the benefits of smart technology and the benefits that they can offer in helping with the running of a building. It has been more challenging making that connection between a smart building and the improvement of spaces for the occupants. And this link between smart technology and creating spaces that are better for employees, spaces that positively contribute to the human performance, this is a link that has been harder to create. But I think that going forwards, and with the current public health situation in mind, the connection between a smart tech-enabled building being a better place for the occupants is a connection that has now happened and that has been easier to understand, and that will probably be made more often. And having had developed these capabilities with many of our customers over the years, this is something that we're already seeing happening more of as we go throughout this pandemic. But I also think that the drive behind greater adoption of technology is likely to move away from organisations and landlords trialling technological solutions and shift towards the employees who will end up demanding these solutions from a safety, security and experience perspective. And again, from our point of view, looking at the spaces that we manage, some of the technologies that we're working with include the likes of smart space scheduling. So Chris mentioned utilisation. This is using artificial intelligence to allocate the right space for the right people at the right time. And this is going to have an immediate benefit in terms of space use, monitoring numbers of users and social distancing rules, etc. But it will also have ongoing benefits in understanding how the return to occupancy is progressing, whilst ensuring teams can collaborate effectively with the right people when back in the office environment. And building monitoring technology is also obviously going to be key going forwards, and this will be in providing information on air quality, especially important at the moment. That will also have an ongoing benefit when we're looking at environmental controls of CO2 and humidity, lighting and noise and the like. And then there's employee controlled features, so workplace experience app. Now, having the ability to control your own space or your own environment has been proven time and again to increase productivity through higher levels of control and happiness of our working environment, and spaces that basically suit your individual needs. Intuitive help desk functions, as well as time-saving tools for employees, thinking about easy desk booking, food ordering, people finding and wayfinding. It's going to be the good use of technology that will contribute to an increase of our workplace experience. And I think that given our current different ways of working, that technology will have an even larger part to play when it comes to helping manage our working lives, thinking about how we connect with our colleagues, or organise collaboration events, or create links between peer groups, all by using technology, some old, some new. And over the past few months, this usage has risen because we can't physically share the same space. But going forwards, it will be because we realised we did not have to share the same space. And at the beginning, I think Chris mentioned that there hasn't been there's some elements of tech that hasn't been adopted by FM, and it was 10 years away. And I think that we will agree that we've now jumped probably 10 years into the future just in the last 3 to 4 months. So I think that the interesting piece between technology and the workplace will be around the reasons we, going forward, choose to come into the office. And my final message is that this is going to change, as the things that people wanted before will not be the things that people want, or more importantly, need in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. That was great. We're a bit pushed for time, so I'm going to try and condense a couple of questions in before we move on to the next topic. The first real burning question, is for you, Rhiannon, which is, how big is your lawn where your robot is saving you a week of mowing? I think you've just given us an insight into EMCOR's salary benefits if you've got a lawn like that.
The dog's probably going to eat the lawnmower anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. I mean, you spend all this time training the dog, it's going to rip it up. You're going to need a robot for that as well.
Yeah, you can schedule nighttime lawn mowing, so we'll have to do that.
Exactly that. But actually, Rhiannon, I do want to ask you a serious question as well, because Ian touched on it, Simi touched on it as well, and I kind of reflected on it in terms of our research. One of the things we found in our research is that the profession at the moment, is their viewpoint of technology is how can it help me do FM better, not how can we utilize technology to create a better workplace experience for everybody else. So it's kind of, if we summed it up in a sentence, it's like, technology helps me do my job better, but I'm not really thinking about how it can help everyone else's job go better. Now, Ian's talked about some of those examples, and Ian, I'm sure you've got a viewpoint in this as well. Ian touched on some of those examples, but actually what we are talking about is a change in mindset, isn't it? That actually technology is an enabler, not for what I am sat here doing myself, but actually to create this much bigger workplace experience.
Yeah, I think so. Your question would be, how is it improving individuals, not just the FM overall experience?
Yeah, thank you for holding me to account there. I didn't actually ask you a question, I just rambled for a little bit. But yes, how are organisations?
Sorry.
But how are organisations? Do you see organisations making that shift, or are we still potentially in a bit of a bubble where we're like, oh, actually, if as long as you could put a CAFM system in that's all I need?
No, I think we're still at a point where we have to bring people along this journey with us, and as we've said, everyone adopts to technology in their home life in various stages. So we still have a workforce of 4,500 people who have varying skill sets and willingness to adopt with technology. So when we're rolling out in a program that will involve technology, we will have early adopters, and we will have people that just genuinely do not want to use that. And we have to understand the psychology behind, why do they not want the change? Is it for fear that that change might end up into replacing their role, or is it because there's a lack of understanding? And also, I think it's how we communicate the change and the technology. Why are we doing this change? What are the benefits for every individual? It's not just the business benefits, sorry Keith, but it's the benefits to our people's well-being, how they enjoy their daily work, and the output is improved efficiencies, improved productivity, but a happier workforce. So I think we are still on the journey where we are bringing people on board, and there is still resistance out there about technology. And yes, COVID might have fast-paced and disrupted in certain elements. of what we're delivering, but I think we're still on that journey of getting people on board in robots, artificial intelligence, you know, automated perception.
So, Sibby,
And maybe, you know, there's all sorts that we'll be looking at, and we need to get people along the journey with that.
Sorry, that's talking about technology. I think my screen froze, and I'm not sure if anyone's still talking. However, on with the show. Sibby, why are we scared? Because we've talked a bit about that. Why are we scared of technology? Because I remember there's something you said, it reminded me of an old marketing conference I was at, where we were talking about digital marketing. You know, this is about 10 years ago. We're talking about digital marketing. Now we're all going to go digital marketing. And one guy stood up, he was from YouTube, and he said, we've got to stop calling it digital marketing like it's something different. There's a reason we are not still calling our kettle the electric kettle. It just becomes the kettle, you know. And it was a real moment for me, because I'm sitting there going, well, actually, this is ubiquitous. We can't say we do our job here, or by the way, technology's over there. But why have we got that? Because one thing, and again, the questions come up through the chat here. Again, it feels like skills are at the heart of this, because there's this sort of fear factor. We saw it in the data. You guys have talked about it. How do we break that? How do we get out of that cycle?
So many things, but I think that maybe that one underlying fear could be that, do people think technology is expensive and therefore I can't do it? So if I'm a customer and you're going to come and sell a technology offer to me, is it because you think it's going to be an expensive solution? I don't know, but the point being is it's all around us, and I think people forget that we live in this technology digital age. Everything we do, and there are early adopters, not just in our sector, but every single decision we make, there's technology all around us. So why are we fearful? I don't know, but we should be the pirates, right, Chris? We should be the ones telling people that this is what they need to adopt, this is what they need to embrace, and these are the solutions that you're going to get. And I think if we all club together a little bit more as well, as a sector, as an industry, there's a real balance there as well.
Absolutely. Right, I'm going to have to move us on. I'm sorry, Ian, I know you've got lots of viewpoints as well, but I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to pick your brains at some point. If anyone's a bit confused why Sammy keeps referring to Sam and pirates, don't worry, we're not having a meltdown. It was one of our talks this morning at the conference. What Sam talked about is professional rule breaking. You know, what is it that's, you know, technology is we can see the opportunity, but it's not happening for whatever reason. Don't wait for someone to tell you can do it. Go ahead, do it, break some rules, be more pirate. So that's really the message there. But thank you, Rhiannon, thank you, Ian, thank you, Simi, for your views and insight into technology. Right, so technology, just so for those that are part of our conference this week, Dave Copland is covering this topic on Friday. He was formerly the Chief Envisaging Officer at Microsoft. He's now the author of Rise of the Humans, his book. And if you've got a chance, find him on YouTube, Rise of the Humans, Dave Copland, amazing show. And also keep an eye out for the follow-up that we're publishing in the coming months to our original report, where we've partnered with Microsoft to look at this whole topic. So that's, if you want more, there's plenty of it. But on to the final of our three topics, the future of work. Perhaps in years gone by, this might have seemed a bit abstract. You know, it might have been something we bung into a conference talk to. Oh, what does the future of work look like? We'll get a futurist, and they'll come and make some professional guesswork, which is what I'd like to call futurists, professional guesswork, and we'll all sort of talk about that and try and explore it. But it feels to me that what the pandemic done has, you know, we mentioned it earlier on. It's stripped away some of the sort of preconceptions we have about work, and suddenly the nature of work, and particularly where it's conducted, is now part of our national narrative. It is headline news. Workplaces are one of the biggest things that we're talking about at the minute. And if we're to assume that our chief concern as a profession is to support employees of organisations and enable them to do good work, then we must be constantly observing changing trends and sentiments of employees. Simply put, the future of work has never been more important a conversation. So here to help us navigate this subject are EMCOR UK's Executive Director of Marketing and Business Development, Jeremy Campbell, and Executive Director of Human Resources, Dylan Wickenden. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Chris. I'm still chuckling a little bit over the robotic salary discussion we've just had at EMCOR UK, and I'm glad you've highlighted that neither Dylan or I are futurologists. I mean, we could probably spend an entire university semester on this particular topic. I guess we do not have time for that. We can't get too deep. So what Dylan and I are going to do, I'm going to look at some of the future trends that we think are going to change our future today, and Dylan is going to look at some practical implications of those trends on industry and maybe how they're going to affect the world of work tomorrow and our FM industry. Guys, some of you may have seen the BBC published a few podcasts last week around the future. A little bit touched dystopian. We saw a planet dying in 2050 with no power. Another was set in 2070, which predicted a future based, I think, on Elon Musk type chips being inserted into your cerebral cortex to enhance human capability. A third set in 2100 would suggest that maybe land mass on Earth will disappear. You've probably seen in the news recently that the Arctic shelf is at its lowest it's been since satellite analysis started 40 years ago, and is shrinking by 13% every decade. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what Penn has to say on Friday about his Arctic experiences. And finally, the BBC offered up that in the next 300 years, after some form of global data crash, we'll lose the sounds of the rainforest, an ecosystem, by the way, that has long since been extinct. But whatever our future, change is constant, it's immortal, it's perpetual. Whether we work in deep oceans or terraforming on Mars, or we explore some of the deep space, we will see new jobs being created that have not yet been imagined, driving a reskilling revolution as we acquire new knowledge and competency, and we develop new manufacturing capabilities, alternative energy sources. Yes, I'm a big believer that we will smash clear the Paris Agreement requirements, and we will stop the 2 degrees C problem that we have. And we'll use nanotechnologies across every conceivable industry sector. So as an FM profession, I really think we've got to adapt. Work for me in the future will not be so much about how, but more around why. I think we'll focus a lot more around purpose. And I think this really supports the discussion that Claire and Keith had a little bit earlier. I guess the real truth is that no one really knows any great certainty, but all we can do is probably look at maybe the next 6 to 24 months, or maybe over the next 10 years to 2030. We all know one thing: the future of work, certainly over the next 6 months, looks like being another period of working at home, or as I now prefer to look at it, I guess I think of it really as living at work, although I no longer have any bandwidth issues. Thinking about the next new normal, most of us will just adapt and succeed. But the catastrophic loss of life that C-19 has inflicted on families around the world is pretty gut-wrenching. Those losses will be amplified if we as a society learn nothing from this pandemic and we just try to go back to the old normal, which is why I think the future of work is going to be about purpose. And I also think the investment community get this. I think we may be suffering a little bit from Zoom and MS Teams fatigue, but home working as a feature of work is set to stay. Could we see the end of the traditional office and workplace? I don't think so, but we certainly need to find ways of supporting home working as we start to see business strategy focusing more on consolidating space, or maybe deleting ownership and opting for new short-term lease arrangements. I was talking to Rashid Kamal, development director at Leesman, about home working and about how our industry has such a massive sort of role to play in the future of work. Rashid's sort of view was it's all going to be about data and how we use data to support what she calls high activity complexity, meaning that people are now performing different types of work activities each and every day: collaborative work, informal work, unplanned meetings, workshops, focus times, for example. So we need to analyze how we deliver a blended experience to support employees both in the traditional workplace and at home, with all their multiple variable needs being considered. I actually think this is going to really disrupt the FM procurement model as well in the near-term future. Probably a topic for another discussion on a different day, but one which I really think our industry needs to focus on. It's going to be pretty challenging to sort of buy services that relate to CO2 control or biophilia or noise or colour or facilities or applications, for example. Let's turn a very, very quick corner. Let's accelerate our discussion and look at those factors affecting industry. Technology, you've heard Simi and the team talk a lot about computing power. There are now 4 billion of us connected to the World Wide Web, with about another 90 million or so devices also connected. In simple English, that's big data. we've got loads and loads and loads of information. According to Forbes, every day we produce 2.7 quintillion bytes of data, which in plain English for me is a lot. But big data is really interesting for facilities managers. I read somewhere that Moore's law is slowing down, and that's the idea that a transistor power doubles every 18 to 24 months. So 50 years ago, 6 megabytes put man on the moon. If you feel in your pocket and you look at your smartphone, that's probably a little bit of a fraction of an application on your smartphone. Today, we're measuring power in exabytes, 10 to the power of 18. I don't understand that. So back to Simi's point about plain and simple English, that's enough computing power to put the entire written contents of the British Library 100,000 times into an exabyte. But we're also at the dawn of quantum computing. Apple, Google, Amazon, IBM, Samsung, Virgin, all these major organizations are sinking hundreds of thousands of dollars into this kind of stuff. Industry 4.0 might slip by and it might become 5.0 very, very quickly. I don't understand quantum computing, but again, in the very simplistic terms, the conventional quick computer can read every book again in the British Library, one after the other. A quantum computer can read them all at the same time. Let's accelerate our discussion even further. Tech is coming. The future is not a distant point. It's here right now. So I'm not quite certain about the survey that was done in 2019, but as facilities managers, we need to recognize that tech is here to enable us to do our job smarter, better, differently, faster and quicker, and focus on experiences. I'm interested in big data because when I was an FM back in the 90s, I remember we had lots and lots of services that we provided, but we had no intelligence and no information around how those services were performing, or how a building was performing, or how productive we were, or what cognitive improvements we could make for individuals and humans by changing some of the environmental conditions inside the office. We simply just didn't have that knowledge. But now, through artificial intelligence and big data, we have got that, and we can use it. But can we use it dynamically? Do we really have the skills, statistical skills, analytical skills, critical thinking skills to use that data? I guess to move our discussion further on, I think that technology will change some of the services and how we deliver those services. Uber-style robotic car parking, for example, managing permit control systems, autonomous vehicles under various different environmental conditions, and run multiple simulations before really applying that back into real life to become more predictive. We can also use augmented reality to help teach our chefs, learn and train and develop our engineers and our front of house staff. So really massive change. And the final couple of points for me before I move on to hand over to Dylan is another change agent, automation. Automation will take every human task it possibly can. We've designed our workplaces to do tasks efficiently and effectively, and we've designed work to be efficient. So ask yourself a question: how many repetitive tasks do you do? Because a machine can do them faster, better, quicker, and at the near procurement nirvana, lowest possible cost. They don't get a backache, and they're never off sick. I see this as a positive because I actually think that we're going to start to create many, many new jobs and many different ways of dealing with technology. Some of my favorite ones are things like memory augmentation therapists, diffractive optic modelers, and plant educators. And please don't ask me what any of those mean. They just sound really, really good in the context of technology. Smart buildings, my final point. We can use algorithms, deep machine learning, to give us lots and lots of information around how a building can perform and how it can interact and fuse with human beings. This is convergence. This is the power of a building to be fully connected, intuitive, sensitive, and understanding. And I think we're going to need new competencies if we're going to meaningfully connect with the buildings of the future to deliver really insightful facilities management experiences in the future. And my final remarks, I do think the conversation is changing. I think the demand for health and virus control is clearly a major topic. But I think the pursuit for global diversity and inclusion, the end of any of all racism, I think the basic right for all human beings to have access to clean water and basic sanitation, the end of poverty, the safeguarding of our natural resources, ecosystems and our biosphere, solving energy, I guess maybe fusion, and the sustainable reverse of our climate change. For me, these are the big urgent imperatives that we as a facilities management profession and industry must embrace if we are to really help drive our clients and customers' organisations forward in the future. This goes back to where I started. I really believe the future of work is, as was discussed at the World Economic Forum at Davos early this year, it is all about purpose. And I leave my very final comments to Walt Disney. If you can dream it, you can do it. And I think, Chris, you mentioned that a bit earlier. You can imagine it, someone somewhere is doing. Dylan, perhaps you'd like to share a little bit now of the practical implications of some of those megatrends and some of those changes as we see them in our business.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, I think the first thing is it's very evident that the work that we do now, how we do it and where we do it will change in the years to come. And as hopefully you'll see from kind of what I run through now and what I'm going to follow on from Ian and Rhiannon and some of the points that you've just raised, Jeremy, is that the focus of change, the expectation of change is probably been advanced and stepped up considerably as a result of what we're experiencing now through COVID. So COVID has already advanced the way that we are working, which may have been something that would have been considered in 5 to 10 years' time. It's kind of brought it to us now. And I'm really going to look at how that puts a question mark on what the modern day office is really. And hopefully we'll agree with some of your comments, but maybe even chuck a few in there that will add some conjecture perhaps to some of the things that we've already heard. But really, if anything, COVID has now shown us that employees can work from home successfully. So that puts the question mark initially on what the modern day office will be and what the environment and the contracts of the future will be. So as we know, much has changed already in the world of work, and we've been through that through some of the technological discussions that have already happened through Simi and Rhiannon, and even some of the details that were the intro from Chris and Keith, etc. But if we look back at the last 10 to 15 years, the technological advances have been incredible. So we used to work in an office because that's where the IT equipment was, or that's where the work was. And of course, I'm being a little bit glib here, but now we can use our own homes and we can connect with our colleagues in what has become a very convenient and easy way to do so. So we've touched on Microsoft Teams and Zoom already, and yes, we are starting to feel a little bit fatigued for that, but we will get better at that. We have to bear in mind that Microsoft Teams and Zoom isn't something that we were using readily and available a couple of years ago. This is something that's been kind of forced upon us now through the way that we are working, and of course we will get better at that. But we've already seen through recently using the likes of Teams that during this pandemic and how we will work in the future, we can use communications tools to be able to work wherever and whenever we need. And I think really that's probably going to be the biggest change to the employment contract. And that's where we're going to see much of the change, as we can assume work is going to be about getting things done rather than being sat in an office or at a desk following a long commute, a stay away, or an average of 35 to 40 hours in a working week. Productivity and a purpose, as Jeremy has said, it is really where the world of work is going to go. So we should expect a change in the way we work through physical changes in our geography, with people no longer moving to live closer to mega cities for work, such as London, as a commute will not really be necessary. Employers will be able to live where they want, on the coast or in smaller cities and towns. And this isn't going to cause the death of these huge cities, but what it will mean is that less of a need to attend them daily for work, and that's already been demonstrated through some of the recent TV images that we've seen in rush hour London, for instance, being very, very quiet. So again, the knock-on effect of that will be the hours of work will undoubtedly change, and they have been changing anyway. So what used to be an average of 40 hours a week, and then became 37.5, and is now 35.1 hours as an average in the UK. However, where the digitalisation of work and a new norm potentially of working from home, or wherever employers would prefer, then employers will want to work the hours that suit them to get the job well done. So, perhaps working in the morning only, and then maybe in the evening, perhaps sometimes at the weekends. But a standard employment contract, or the standard 9 to 5, really, I think in the near distant future, will soon no longer be the norm, and it's something that we at EMCOR are already looking into at the moment. We'll then have to consider the working environment too. So again, as Jeremy has said, is the working environment a home environment now? So is the office a home? So does that mean as employers, that we have to focus on our insurances now and look at how we have to change the way that we insure our employees for where they work? Do we have to worry about accidents at home now, and do they get classed as riddles? Buying of office equipment is currently a taxable perk. So will that still be the same if there's if we have to have more of our employee base working from home? And the same with the commute. So do we pay mileage from the home to the office more frequently? these are just some of the smaller things that will affect my function as an HR practitioner, but will certainly affect our businesses going forward as well. I think this raises another question around the smart offices and the smart cities, and follows on from some of the detail that Ian Baker said there. Is there a danger of being less required to attend an office and the home space becoming more the office? So is there a danger that there is, you know, a need to perhaps review what a smart office is or what these smart cities are? I don't think it will be in its entirety. As not all roles can be performed at home, and therefore the office space and locations of the future will have to allow for creative thinking, comfortable and exciting spaces, technologically advanced, to catch a new demographic of younger, more educated employees. And that's something that I'll come on to in just a moment. But of course, the knock-on effect to that, and something that again Simi and Rhiannon touched on, is an aging population who are going to need to be retrained or trained on new job roles, new technology, and changes to the working environment. It's been estimated that somewhere in the region of around 300 million job roles will change in the next 10 years, and part of that probably, you know, again using the COVID analogy, is leapt forward even sooner than that. But with 300 million job roles changing, 53 million of those in Europe alone, there will be roles that will disappear. There will be roles that will advance and change, and there will be new roles that are created due to automation. I can't even say it properly, let alone get it out. And digitalization as well. With the emergence of AI and machine learning capabilities, there's going to be a real challenge on learning and development functions to support the development needs of an aging workforce. This is also a consideration for the wellness and the well-being of our employees too, who may well struggle to adjust to this. So in terms of FMs of the future, in terms of HR functions and businesses of the future, it's going to be more incumbent upon companies, more so than today, for our HR functions and for the FMs of the future, to ensure that any authentic well-being programs are well embedded to support this. So of course, it's not all doom and gloom, as I'm kind of labelling it on it. We are already seeing the emergence of new technologies and data-driven activity, which is really going to enhance, you know, certainly in terms of the FM space, how our engineers work and the capabilities that they have, almost becoming data scientists as they use the technologies to help them understand and improve the assets, the buildings, the equipment and the employees that they look after as well. So it's going to be an exciting time for those engineers that embrace this aspect of it, and that will be expected to pick up on the data-driven part of our business. So as we know, children stay at school longer, so they're receiving more education, and they will already understand the automation, digitalization, and the technology that will come with that. You know, and it will be a similar mindset that they will have to some of these sports mentality, in terms of the elite sports mentality. They look to embed that into some of their exciting careers that they want to follow. So they want to succeed at all costs. They want to do it for the good of the team, and they want to achieve it. And with that will be that perceived improvement to our productivity that we were touching on earlier. So I think in short, and I guess a bit of a smaller one for me to finish on here though, but so for the FMs and the work leaders of the future, they will have to grapple with the change that automation and digitalization will bring to the world of work. But they will also have what will undoubtedly be a very exciting and technologically advanced, better world of work. And I think that concludes it for where I'm sort of discussing the points for the employee base. But there will be other things to consider as part of that as well. So if the office environment does change, if the office environment is something that is going to perhaps not be as big for us to consider in terms of the actual office space itself, will we see things like wage and salaries creep up? So will there be wage creep as we look to perhaps reinvest in employees and look to diversify their skill sets as part of that program of activity too? These are all things that we've got to consider. So in terms of the world of work, and I guess it's a little bit of a cliche, there are probably more questions to ask at the moment than we can actually answer. But it would seem that there will be some significant changes as a result of this whole process of digitalization, automation, and the way that we are looking to engage with our employee base and our customer base of the future through improved communication processes. And I think for me that kind of concludes that. So thanks, Jeremy and Chris, and hopefully that's kind of followed on nicely from the different pieces that we've already heard from the rest of our speakers today.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And yes, I think it was actually really nice that some of these aspects that we've been talking about today started to converge in what is essentially shaping the future of work. Now, we haven't got a massive amount of time for questions, so I'm probably just going to ask one, and I'm going to ask for you said at the beginning there, Jeremy, not futurologists, but I am going to ask for a bit of a prediction, if that's okay. We talk a little bit about when we get into conference mode and we talk about we look at sort of, like you said, the stuff that's going on in Davos and all that sort of stuff. I think sometimes we inherently have a bit of optimism around what the future could look like. I think it's inbuilt within us that we're quite optimistic that, you know, we're going to have fulfilling jobs and we're going to go in one direction. But I did read one article a couple of weeks ago in Workplace Insight online publication that asked whether actually there is a risk that we go in a slightly other on another track, which is the commoditization of tasks. Now, some people might be aware of a platform called Viva, but what you can do on Viva is you can say, I need X done, and then people bid online to say, I can do that. And a lot of people use it for web design or audio creation or whatever. It's quite creative stuff. But could we feasibly see a scenario where organizations go, well, hold on, we don't need a workplace. Actually, do we even need a workforce? Or do we just need someone to manage a series of tasks that we just fire out to the lowest bidder, and then someone just needs to put them together? Is that even feasible? Do you worry ever that capitalism, that we talked right at the beginning, Keith mentioned capitalism, is going to force us down a hold on a minute? There's a cost saving here or a margin expander here. So quick prediction. Am I being pessimistic, Jeremy?
I think we might see the end of macroeconomics as we know it, to be honest, Chris, and we will not be pursuing investment, profit or money anymore. But I think it's a super question. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I do think there is a place for online bidding for the commoditized aspects of the services that we deliver as an industry. I think when it comes to looking at more rounded services such as productivity, such as the actual workplace environment or the spaces that we use, then I don't see that having a place.
No. And Dylan, like you know, from your perspective, you'll be looking at it from an HR point of view. Can we even manage, you know, how, if we go down that route, if it's completely like commoditized, you know, sort of lowest bidder stuff, one thing we're missing is culture, right? You sort of miss that connectivity. How important do you think it is to protect that?
Really important. I think one of the biggest things around employee engagement, or engagement in any way, is that feeling of belonging to something, that sense of belonging. And we touched on it earlier on in the week with the questions around well-being and wellness. You absolutely must have that connectivity. There must be that culture type environment for there to be an element of thrive. So even working on the home environment as the office, etc., you will still need to have that feeling of being connected, that feeling of culture with other employees that you work with of a similar like-minded nature, to be able to get your workforce and the people that you work with to be as productive as you want them to be. So if you just go out and sell it as a contract almost basis, the working environment, you won't have quite the same effect. It will be more robotic, less of an employee-centric type business, and I don't think anybody would thrive in that environment.
And now you would say that because that's the job that you're doing. I think there's a self-preservation thing going on in it again. No, I think you're totally right. Now, so thank you guys. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Dylan, for wrapping up our 3 mega trends. I've got one more task to do, and that's to pass back to Keith, CEO of EMCOR UK, who just wants to leave us with some closing remarks. I'll be back shortly after him, and I'll take you through a couple of notes, and then that'll be the end of our webinar. So over to you, Keith.
Chris, I know we're a bit short on time, but a quick thank you to IWFM for laying on this platform and for you hosting this enthusiastic group of people. How do you summarize that? Our purpose is quite clear. We're trying to create a better world at work by bringing our best together in collaboration. And you've seen from the earlier parts of this presentation, we can do a lot. If you think about that, the future is just the sum of the next few seconds, hours, weeks, months, and years. So we can act now to make a big difference. And I think we can as an industry. We've got the skills, the competencies, and now the need amongst our customers to head towards a carbon neutral strategy, to adopt new technology, and to really embrace this new work wherever that place is, whether it be in a home environment or a work environment. So I think we're at a pivotal point in the industry, but I think we're really ready for it. And I think our customers are almost demanding it. So I welcome to see the sort of progress in the next few months and years as we adapt our services to this new normal that we're seeing. Thank you to the panel, and thanks to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Keith. So look, all it's left for me to do is to thank everyone. I'm going to do something that I know that every single member of the EMCOR team is going to hate me for, but I'm going to do it anyway. And this is going to check that they're still online. Can you all turn your webcams back on and just give everyone a quick wave, because this is the biggest panel that we've ever had, and I kind of feel like we need to show everyone that we're all here and we've all collaborated. There you go. So that's the EMCOR team. Thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you for being supporters of our conference. We do appreciate it, and it's partnerships like that that help us deliver content. So thank you very much. Now get off my screen, stop hogging my screen. This is my outro, this is my moment. So everyone that's watching, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you're interested in the topics we've covered, or have any professional skills needs, we've mentioned skills a few times, visit the IWFM website. We have a variety of resources to support you, including good practice guides, guidance, reports, and more. You can find them all at iwfm.org.uk/insight. We have also got a special bank of resources for COVID-19 related insight. So that's there to help the profession through the pandemic. We have a resource hubs. You'll find advice, guidance, resources, signposts, everything you need when dealing with the impacts of the pandemic and supporting your organisations as we return to the corporate workspace. Because I'm not a big fan of returning to work, because guess what? We've been working really hard for the last 5 months. No one's returning to anything. You'll also find recordings of all of these webinars. So if you go on there, you'll see every single webinar that we've ever done as part of our Navigating Turbulent Times series. That's 20 episodes of killer content. They're all free to access. Share them with whoever you can. And lastly, if you have any questions for us at IWFM, or any case studies or best practice, just ping them into us. You can do that at policy@iwfm.org.uk. So that is all from us today. Join us next Thursday at midday, where my colleague Peter Brogan will be joined by representatives from ENCO, looking at our sustainability projects and talking with our sustainability SIG. They'll be looking at specifically the insights that come fresh from our sustainability survey report. So do not miss that. And if you are part of our week-long conference, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and Friday, where we have 4, and I repeat that, 4 world-class speakers talking about our mega trends. Good night, God bless, see you soon.